Ancient voices call our names through the fire and the flames. Demons are real, feel the fear that whispers dancing your
Up in the sky, what do I see? A UFO is looking at me. Lights flashing all around, bass bumping from the ground. Aliens grooving to the beat, hip-hop rhythms got them on their feet. Strange beings shaped to the flow, spaceships rocking to the show. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing the stars and neon light, hop to the beat till the morning light. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing in the stars under neon light, hop to the beat till the morning bright. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing the stars and neon light, hop to the beat till the morning light. I'm the god, I rise and shine. In this realm I'm divine. Like the world was just a sign. Feel the power, it's all mine. All mine. Thunder claps, the sky obeys. In my hands lightning plays. Mountains bow, the ocean sway. I command night and day. I'm a god, feel the force. Every star on my course. Follow me, I'm the source. Life itself, no remorse. From the clouds to the ground, in my glory you are found. Eternal life.
Ooh, that was fucking, oh man, that was great. Man, good, wonderful, wonderful, fantastic morning it is. We have not recorded this episode or yet. We have not streamed the podcast or even recorded a podcast episode or nothing in the past 2.5 weeks. So I'm super excited about today because we've mentioned this topic all the way back in season 1 and 2, which we don't really do seasons. We kind of just go and go and go like the Energizer Bunny, like I'm a Energizer battery, D battery. We got all that extra power. So we got we got a lot to talk about, and I haven't done this much research and memory refreshing for an episode, probably if at all, actually, for any of this. We took that time off, not purposely, and then I did a whole bunch of research and everything that whole time, and there was just so much going on in IRL life and whole different everything that I was like, all right, we gotta do this work. And there are people out there trying to do similar things or talk about similar things. I'm definitely not the only one, especially if you look at what's been going on in the news and in UAP news and then all stuff like that. Congressional speaking, senators coming out and talking to podcast hosts and radio hosts and newscasters and telling all these different things. You have recently, you have JD Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and Anna Paula Luna or whatever her name is, all come out and say that UAPs are real. All right, so that's three. Then we've also had that congressman who's been working on this since the early 2000s and was the one who funded and started the program that Luis Elizondo ran, that we eventually came to be known as ATIP, AATIP. It's like it's got two A's, like in the name Aaron. So it's very interesting, the world that we've entered into in the past year and a half to 2 years. I mean, we have been talking about this for a long time, us specifically. Then on top of that, you have extraterrestrial theorists, otherworldly theorists, everybody doing this since the 60s. And even before then, you have people fantasizing about the world and different planets and stuff. Think of Orson Welles and his Martian, when Mars attacks and the Martians attack, and you think that, and everybody thought it was real. Why did everybody think it was real? Because they thought that it was possible that extraterrestrials could exist on another planet. That's why they thought it was real. That's why it was so believable. Otherwise, you would literally just go, "Oh, this is a crazy story. Let me listen to this." It's not just the fact that he was such a great orator and he was such a great storyteller and speaker. It's the fact that everybody believed in this time that these things happened. In the early 1900s and in the late 1800s, you have many prominent scientists coming out and saying these theories. Look all the way in Russia at the idea of cosmism. I mean, we literally call the Russian astronauts cosmonauts because they believed in the prevailing theories of cosmism and the cosmos. I mean, and it's all right then and there. And then you have some of the most profound stories being talking about in Russia and all these other things, and in their space program, and in all these separate things. So it's absolutely wonderful how prevalent and worldwide it is. But it's not just in our modern time. We talk about it in every episode, and it all goes back to the ancient times. Forget about just, 2,000 years ago in Rome and Jesus and whatever. What about 1,000 years before that? What about 1,500 years before that, when it was Moses? What about 3,000 years before ancient Rome, when it was Abraham, and God came down and told him to leave the city of Ur and leave Sumer entirely and travel to the city to Akkad, which is now we call Acadia. And he then told him to continue traveling onward all the way to the promised land. So we have this idea of this promised land told to us by a divine being, a God from the heavens, for 5,000 years. More than that, actually, because we think now, especially through modern archaeology and historical records and stuff, and Sumerian modern archaeology, specifically in Sumer and in the city of Ur, we think that Abraham was really about 3,500 BC. So that would be about, 5,500 plus or minus years ago. And then if we take into the fact the idea that I think that our time is wrong, as well as other scientists and chroniclers and other people think that our time is wrong, if you think that Abraham was like 3,500 BC, add in all the different time calculations and the different areas of understanding, you get to really about the year where it was about 5,600 years ago and 75 more years on top of that. So we could say it was about 5,700 years ago. And if you look into this, this continues on. It's not just here in our Western cultures and in our traditions. This goes all the way out through every single culture in the world. I spoke about last time and many times about how I was sitting there in religious class reading the Bible, sitting there word for word. And what am I reading? I'm reading the same thing that I was reading and learning about in Japanese mythology, in Shintoism, in Buddhism, in mental ideas, in all these different things. It's absolutely insane. The similarities that are coming across is intense. So the idea that all of this is somehow new or somehow happening is totally wrong. The thing is that we have to recognize that all across the world, we've been experiencing the same exact thing. And so what's so interesting is I was reading, if you look at the bottom of stream and if you look at websites and our website and different things that we've talked about, you basically come to the idea that if I were to be a religious person or a person who believed in certain religions, I would be probably a Zen Buddhist, because Zen Buddhists in Japan combined really Shintoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism together, which are really kind of the ideas that I kind of believe in to this day in life. I mean, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the warrior mind. And specifically, we're going to talk today about this. I realize is going to be at least a two-parter episode, if not more. And I realized that I was sitting there thinking about it, and there's just too much to unpack. And if I think about it even further, we already did an episode on the basics of Zen Buddhism and the beliefs and all these things. So you have to look at it from a worldly perspective. And when we talk about the samurai mind and the warrior mind, we're talking about our mentality for our daily life as a person, as a people, and as a society, as a civilization, as a planet. We have to think about all these wonderful, crazy ideas and say, maybe there's something to it. So today we're going to talk about the warrior mind. And today's episode is titled The Warrior Mind. And I want to delve into the topic of the mentality of these people. I was using AI a few weeks ago to give myself a refresher course on this topic. A refresher course meaning that I wanted it to have a conversation with me and help me remember things that I forgot. Basically, bring all the information to the forefront of my memory. What's with this camera? There we go. There we go. Bring all this information to the forefront of my memory. That's what we're looking to do. And so, in order to do that, we realize that we have to. I had to do more research. And I also used AI also to help me look up the research quicker and to have a conversation with me, like I said, to prepare my oration for talking to you. Because talking to AI is great, but it's got no personality. It's not a the personality is like coded into it. It sounds like a person because it knows how to inflect the voice for certain specific words, but it's not a person. It's not having a discourse with you. It's not having a conversation with you. It's you're saying information, they're saying information, and it's information back and forth. And it's not like it's not like a full-on person-to-person conversation, but it's great for looking up information and looking it up quickly. I was looking up so I was talking to the AI, and I was delving into the beliefs from it. And one of the examples I used, and I know I've used this before, the AI helped me remember the name also of of what's it called? It helped me remember the name of this general. And he's not a general. He's technically a general, but he's the Navy equivalent of a general. It's Admiral McRaven. And I referenced to the AI about how General Admiral McRaven did that whole speech about for the college, did the whole speech about how making your bed was important. Now, what's so interesting is I always made my bed. Nobody ever had to tell me to make my bed. I don't remember ever my mother telling me to make my bed. Like I just don't remember it at all. Like I just always made my bed. I liked the way it looked in the aesthetic. I liked the way it felt to have a nice comfortable bed, and I liked the way that putting the cover over it kept the bed protected and warm in the wintertime, or at least warmer. So it was interesting to me because I didn't realize that this is what I was doing until I heard him speak about this. He spoke about making your bed every morning because you literally had to work and go about your life in a very organized and disciplined fashion. And the reason about that is because when you start your day off organized and disciplined, it's the first action for what you do throughout the rest of the day. So if you start your morning off with a simple act of making the bed, that's your first accomplishment of the day. That accomplishment leads to you accomplishing the next thing and the next thing because you know that what you do means something. You know it's worth it. You know it's important. So that's why you do it. And you do it because you want to feel good about yourself and your self-worth. Now, what's interesting too is that it comes from an admiral, a military man, a lifelong military man. And the reason it's interesting is because this is exactly what the samurai thought. This is exactly the samurai's way of thinking. Now, in the morning, the samurai used to get up and they would perform their katas, which were their forms for fighting. And they were basic forms and they would drill them early in the morning. They would cleanse their skin with water, cleanse their body with water. They would do all these things. Why do they do that? First of all, we do something similar today. You wake up in the morning and you take a shower. You feel clean and refreshed. This was important for the samurai because you believed that you were ready for the day in your personal life, but you felt like you were honoring the gods. By cleansing yourself, you were cleansing your soul, your mind, your purity, your being, and you were starting off fresh. Well, today you don't need to wash your hands and your skin in a little basin of water. Today you take a shower. Today you take a shower and you cleanse yourself. You cleanse your skin and you feel great getting out of the shower. You feel reawakened, energetic, all these things. It's the same thing. You would put water on your face and you would clear your skin and you would feel clean and all these things. It's the same thing. Just in our modern times, all we do is take a shower. You don't go and scrub yourself off in the river, and you don't go and fill a basin of water and wash your face with it and no soap. Like you don't do that anymore because our times have advanced, but the process is the same. Think about, your morning coffee routine. This is interesting because this aligns with self-discipline. You do this if you do the same routine every morning, you're disciplining yourself. So if you make your coffee in the morning, like I do every morning, if you make your coffee in the morning and you do that daily, that's part of your ritual. It makes you feel good. It wakens your brain up. It wakens your senses up. And it's not just the caffeine. It's your morning routine that you do. Think about if you are running late one morning and instead of making your coffee, you have to go buy coffee. Think about how your day is going. Well, you woke up late, so you didn't accomplish your first task of rising early to worship the gods. You didn't do that at all. So you didn't accomplish your first task right there. And then you also didn't do your normal routine of making your coffee. You didn't do that at all. Why didn't you do that? Because you woke up late. So you have this grouping of events that are at least, and then how do you feel afterwards? Right? You show up in the office, you're 20 minutes later, whatever, no big deal because you're usually earlier on time. So, nobody's really too mad at you about it. But you're sitting there and you didn't do your normal routine. So you feel off. You feel different, like you're not yourself. Today's a crazy day. Everything's overwhelming, all this stuff, and you feel all of that. But what if you woke up late and still made your coffee, still took your shower, still did everything in your routine just later in the day? You would feel just as good. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you slept more. And my point in proof is think about how when you get like a nice 8 to 10 hours sleep and after working real hard and you sleep all the time, you feel sluggish. You don't feel good because you didn't get up and rise early with the day. You didn't set a goal for yourself and a you didn't set a routine for yourself. You didn't do all these things. So while you don't go out today and wake up and wash your skin in a water basin, you don't go and have your tea ceremony. You don't practice your kata and meditate. You may meditate. We still do a lot of meditation today, but you don't grab your swords and practice your kata. You don't do any of that. But what you do is the same similar routine. You replace washing your face in the river basin with taking a shower. You replace your morning tea making with a nice cup of coffee. You replace your morning kata forms with going to the gym. But it's all the same thing. You have this diligence, you have this determination, this passion, this belief. You may still meditate today. Maybe you don't meditate, but you do yoga. Maybe, which is technically a form of meditation. And so maybe you don't do any of these other things, but what you do is the modern day version of it. You're the modern day warrior, the samurai mind, the warrior mind. You have that warrior mentality in you because you get up every day and do the same thing, and you perform your routines and you do your tasks and you accomplish them. That's the key. It's not just it's not just about going and doing it. It's about accomplishing it. You make yourself indispensable not only to others but to yourself because you are so diligent and determined and disciplined. See, the samurai and the warriors of the day, there's a reason why they were the best warriors in the whole planet. Better than Spartans, everything. And because of their rigorous discipline and doing all these different things daily. And it wasn't just about themselves, it was about sacrifice for a higher being. See, you had to go to bed late and wake up early to rise and set with the setting of the suns and the day. You don't go to bed as soon as the sun goes down. You make the most of your day. And what ended up happening is during peace times, these samurai who had all this peace during the day and everything, they literally would be up all night, and then they came out with this beautiful poetry about late night flowers and love and all these things. And these guys are cold-blooded killers coming up with this beautiful artistic poetry. It's absolutely unbelievable. And why? Because they were disciplined. They were connected with the gods. And not only that, but they believed in the gods. Bread and coffee. They believed in the gods and how their daily actions were meant to worship these beings. The whole point of it is to worship with it. You would wake up early, not only to make the most out of your day and to perform your daily disciplines, but because you believe that you were getting up into, and by you waking up and performing these disciplines, you were worshiping the great mother goddess Amaterasu. You were worshiping Amaterasu, and you were, take a sip of coffee. Man, I make good coffee. So you were worshiping Amaterasu, the light goddess. What's so interesting is she was meant to be the one to bring light. You have this as being other creator gods. You have it as Odin's father, Zeus's father, Kronos. You have all these different perceptions all across the world, and yet it's the same beings we're talking about. Amaterasu was the mother goddess, yet some Greek mythologists believe that she might also have been Aphrodite. And it's interesting because they say that she has more Asian appearances and she came from a land far in the east. Well, what land is very far in the east? From Greece. China, but also Japan. And they also were directly to the east. So you gotta remember that she could have been one of these beings, the mother goddess. And it's so interesting because her brother was Susanoo, the storm god, the same thing as Thor. So what are you talking about here? And what are we talking about here? We're talking about the same beings. And the warriors of the day would get up and they believed that every second of their day was a ritual to honor this god, to honor Amaterasu by waking up early, simply by waking up early to a fixed routine time. You were worshiping Amaterasu. And it's interesting because I always do this. I don't necessarily follow it, but I have a routine where my Alexa devices all are in the house tell me when it's 11:50, it says it's time to go to bed. And then when it's midnight, 10 minutes later, it shuts all the lights off and everything. Shuts everything off. So I go to bed. And then my alarm goes off and my daily routine wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now on Saturdays, I usually don't get up until 8 o'clock, but it's a fixed time. It's still a fixed time. So therefore, it still is in worship of the gods. It's still part of the warrior way. But it's not the same time. So what's so interesting is that I do this on my own, and I did this without even realizing as I was connecting to the samurai way, to the warrior mind. I never realized that this is what I was doing until later on. And then I remembered about Shintoism and the worshiping of the kami and waking up early with the samurai mind. And it's so interesting because you should always strive to do that. Think about it in our modern times. How many people say there's never enough time in the world, and yet you sleep for 8, 10, 12 hours a day? Well, 12 hours a day is literally half the day. 8 hours of the day is literally a third of the day. So if you sleep for 8 hours every day, you get about a third. You've wasted literally 1/3 of your entire day laying in bed. That's exactly what happened. I mean, listen, you might work hard, you might have needed to sleep, and that's okay. But you need to develop the routine. And this is what was key, because this routine and this discipline made them the world's greatest warriors ever. Ever. And it wasn't until they were so good that when you were a samurai, hold on. I just love this coffee. It's just so good. And I don't want it to get cold. If you were a samurai, you were so good and so strong that you didn't need a whole army at your back. You just needed maybe one, maybe 2 or 3 of you at the most. Okay, maybe we'll say a squad of 4. All right? Like that's what you got. And what's crazy is these guys were so strong that they would literally go and challenge other people just for their reputation. And you would go and what's interesting is I also mentioned this when we started playing Ghost of Tsushima, the director's cut. Awesome game. One of my favorites. We only started playing it recently, but it's so freaking good. And it's interesting because the samurai would go out and say, I am Lord so and so of this group and this clan, and I have here's the list of my accomplishments and all the people I've defeated. And some of these guys would drone on for like an hour. Like I'm telling you, like they have written documentation of these samurai going in and what they say and everything. Like there was a person who sat there and wrote it down. There were people who wrote it down later on to the best of their memory. So it's so interesting because these guys would go on for forever just listing all their great deeds and everything wonderful that they did. And then finally you would have, to give yourself that sense of honor and worship. And then you would finally fight this guy. And by the way, the other guy would then say, "Who are you to challenge me? I am Lord so and so, and these are my accomplishments." And then that guy would go on for like an hour, and it's not even a joke. They would literally speak for like an hour, sometimes more, and these guys would just go on and list their accomplishments. And so what was crazy about this, when the Chinese, which were run by the Mongols at the time, began to start invading, the first thing that happened is there's actually a story. There's actually a story of all the ships, the Mongol ships gathered in the harbor. And one guy stood there, one samurai, one lone samurai stood there on imagine like a raised up cliff edge that drops down into the ocean. And there's like a tiny little beach there, and that's it. And the waves are crackling all on the end. Hundreds and hundreds of ships out in the water, all bearing the Mongolian Chinese flag of the time, whatever they used for a flag at the time, I'm not sure. All bearing this thing. And this one guy stands there, whips out his sword, and raises his sword above his head and says, again, "I am Lord so-and-so, and these are my accomplishments and my deeds," and just droned on the whole time. "Send out your best warrior to fight me. Send out your greatest fighter, and we will settle this right now, like men, man to man, sword to sword. You ain't got shit," is what he was saying, right? And it's so funny because this was so foreign to the Chinese and to the Mongols. They were used to fighting big armies, big groups, and they were used to being a big army themselves. They thought it was stupid. They said, "Why are you here, like, just telling me your great deeds? I don't give a shit. I want your land and your resources. Like, what are you talking about?" And so they thought it was stupid until they started to invade. First of all, one of the invasions ended up with the entire fleet, except like a few ships, being destroyed in the Sea of Japan, between China, Russia, and Japan, being totally destroyed, and all because of a great wind or a typhoon or something. And what's so crazy about that is they would pray to the god and the storm god Susanoo. And what happened? A storm came. A storm came and destroyed all the ships. Then later, when they got, they finally made landfall and did all these things, the same thing happened. The samurai went out and said, "Hey, I'm Lord so-and-so. These are my great accomplishments. Aren't I freaking awesome, bro?" And he would say that. And they just basically like destroyed this guy with the whole group of them for one guy. And this guy puts up a fight. There's chronicles that their writings have still survived to this day, and they say this guy literally put up a fight, beat down dozens of these Chinese soldiers. Imagine this for a second. One guy, two swords on his hip, and he sits there and goes, "All right, I could take all these guys out, whole army, no problem." How freaking tough do you have to be? How freaking strong do you have to be to have such confidence in yourself to take on an entire freaking army that you're going to walk thousands of soldiers, that you're just going to walk up and be like, "I got this, bruh. No worries. No worries at all." And it's so crazy for me to think about. And this is what they did, and these guys were so strong. And you say, well, the Chinese, but the Mongols came in, and what happened is the Japanese realized that we can't have these individual warriors anymore. We need to group them all together. We need to create a standing army. And this was one of the first standing armies in Japan. They used to have a standing army earlier in the day, way back in the day when it was the emperor who had full control. Then what happened was is the elites and the emperors in their time, they got caught up in the courts and the luxurious way of life and the tax incomes and all these things. So they got laxed and they didn't have a standing military anymore. So what happened was is these other little villages would build their own standing armies. They would build their own standing armies and they would have one single leader called the shogun. And the shogun, while being extremely powerful and wealthy and all these things, was not the only power and did not supersede the emperor. However, they also didn't really have to listen to the emperor as long as they paid their taxes. But the samurai and the shoguns and any Japanese person would have never, ever done any harm to the emperor. It was believed that the emperor and his family were direct descendants of the gods, that they were the ones entrusted by the gods to lead us. And it's crazy because a lot of religions say that too. And what's so interesting is no matter what they did, it always tied back to the gods. It always tied back to the belief in these otherworldly heavenly beings. Absolutely insane. And it just drives my interest so much. I just love hearing about this. And what's so interesting is these samurai would go out and when they joined the group together, they took down the Mongols like nobody else because each individual warrior was so disciplined and honorable and practiced and strong and fierce that when they joined together as an army, it was no problem for them to work together as an army because they were already disciplined. And it was no problem for them to go out and fight because they already were trained for decades. They knew all of this stuff. You know, it wasn't until the end of really World War II when the Japanese shoguns started recruiting warriors who were young, like younger children and stuff, or maybe not like literally children, but like, 16-year-olds. I mean, that's basically a child. So, it's not basically, it is a child. So, so you got, under 18. So literally, but they would start doing this because they had no other choice. They were running out of people, trained soldiers, all these different things. There's these stories of these crazy young kids who were like 17, 18, 16 years old going in these little suicide torpedo bombs. I mean, crazy, dude. They had these little tiny submarines in Japan, which was really cool. I watched this whole military documentary about it and about other things. And one of the things that they talked about was that they had the Japanese during World War II and towards the end of World War II mostly had these submarines that were little mini submarines the size of a torpedo, and they would literally launch them out of the torpedo tubes with the person in it, and the person was steering it, and they would steer it towards the ship, and it was, you heard of the kamikaze planes, the suicide planes, but these are suicide torpedoes that they were doing. And they were so small that a lot of them had to be used by young children, 16, 17-year-olds. I mean, it's really crazy to think about, but that's what they had to do. And, there's one guy I saw who actually, they had him on the recording, who was actually survived being a suicide torpedo pilot. Absolutely nuts. And what's so interesting is because he's talking about it like within full regret from the past few, from after a few decades of looking back at it and looking back at his life. He always talks about his regret. Talked about it. I think the gentleman passed along. But it's just so interesting to me. So, also, if you haven't followed on X or re-liked and reposted the post, make sure you go do that. I appreciate it. Um, so what's so interesting is it's all interesting. I keep saying what's so interesting because it's all so fascinating for me. So these samurai would go out and do all these different things, and they kept their mentality. It was all about reinforcing and building their mentality to be strong, to be fierce, to be dedicated, to be committed, to be honorable, to be all these different things. And that's what it was all about. No matter what you did, you wanted to be honorable. You wanted to be wise and worthy and strong and fierce. It's absolutely incredible. And I literally believe in all these things today, especially as, being the god of war in the war multiverse in a other persona, I should say. I'm still all about that, all about discipline and warrior mentality and honor and all these different things. It's very important because we have lost that sort of sense in our real life and in our modern times. We have lost that sense of it having this diligence in order to succeed. People want everything to be instantaneous, especially, anybody over 50 right now, or like 55 too. Like you want it to be, you want everything to be the same. You don't want to change it. You want to just keep going on, but that's not how life is. Our past parents and our past generations, they always just did what was done before them, or whatever worked for them, or whatever their parents did or told them. A lot of people do that now today. I mean, you see these commercials like for Progressive, like where they have how to not be your parents. Well, why do you think they have that? Because mad people are acting exactly like their freaking parents, doing all this dumb, stupid shit when they could be literally doing almost anything else. So it's crazy nonsense, but it's crazy to think about. So these samurai would keep their mentality, and they would keep their belief in the gods and in the kami whole in their mind. And not only that, but they also believed in Confucian ideals. So you have Buddhist ideals, which were, developed by Siddhartha Gautama, and he was cracking my back. Ads are over on Twitch, thank the gods. And so it's so where was I going with that last part just a second ago? I got distracted by the way, starting tomorrow, in case you haven't heard, starting tomorrow's stream, we're going to have our own AI bot. So I built our own AI bot, and I built it to have 3 distinct personalities. So I made up my own personalities. I prepped them and everything, coded them, did all these things. Worked with AI to remember most of the codes because who the hell remembers college? And also, I don't have the notebooks anymore that I took all my amazing notes in for during those courses. So I had to use AI to help me remember how to code and stuff. And I remembered a lot of it, but it's hard to keep every single thing in the forefront of your memory all the time. I mean, it's so difficult. And so, I always, it was crazy. So these samurai would get up but they believed that everything they would do was in worship of the gods who came down from the heavens. Just let that sink in with you. Because it's the same thing that you hear in the Bible. The book of Genesis. God sent the watchers down from the heaven and commanded them to watch over humanity. Or change that to Lord Anu, the supreme God, commanded his son, God Enki, to watch over humanity and rule over the world, and then commanded his other son, Lord Enlil, to do all these other things. The same thing, commanded him to go to the earth and rule over the people. You have the Yellow Emperor in China. Same thing, coming down. He was riding through his star chariot and saw that the people of the world were suffering and said, I could bring them happiness and civilization. And what does he do? He teaches people discipline. He teaches them mathematics and learning disciplines. He teaches them how to do all these different things. He teaches them what to do in the world and brings them civilization through discipline, through honor, through all these different things. And so it's fascinating. And what's so interesting too is that when you look at the all the different gods that Shintoism has, the belief in them is extraordinary. It's not just like how there was a god for rain and a god for earthquakes and a god for horses and a god for war and a god for blah, 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 like in other polytheistic religions. But instead, in this polytheistic religion, they believe that everything had life, even inanimate objects, which was so interesting because I was talking to the AI about this, and it's so fascinating because they would literally go and I lost my train of thought. I mentioned the AI again. God damn it. Losing my train of thought because I'm talking about different things. What were they doing? I mentioned to the AI. What did I mention? What did I mention to the AI? Oh my God. Something so stupid. I remember. Okay. It wasn't stupid at all. Okay. I mentioned to the AI that I was reading this book a few years ago. A lot of years ago, maybe. I don't know. Time doesn't exist for me. Could have been like an hour ago. And so I was reading this book, and it compared Vedic Sanskrit, or excuse me, Vedic Sanskrit is the language, that it's written in. It compared Vedism, which was the precursor to Indian Hinduism, to modern day physics and quantum mechanics. And I thought that was one of the most, if not the most fascinating thing ever, because they believed in one God, one supreme being. All these other beings were gods too. They called them gods, but they weren't like the supreme God. They weren't the same thing as the supreme God. And in China and in Taoism, they call this one singular supreme being the Tao. You had all these different, and similarly in Greece, you have Apollo riding his star chariot and to help with the rising and setting of the sun. And meanwhile, in Japan, you have Amaterasu doing the same exact thing. She is the goddess that raises the sun every single day. And we should pray worship to her because she does that. It's the same thing, same exact thing. It's absolutely crazy. And so you're talking about this the same exact people and culture and discipline, but told in two different languages, multiple different languages, and from a cultural perspective and from a planetary geographical perspective. It's the same reason why we have different skin colors and different perceptions of things. It's all geography and all perception of the earth and everything. It has nothing really to do with whether you're human or not. It's not like it's got your pigment. The reason you're more tan or less tan or more red skinned or whatever is because you have all these you have all of this. So what's interesting too is, so what is this vegan protest? That's funny. I'm not vegan, but I will protest being vegan. Because I mentioned before that the gods before the great flood did not allow humans to eat meat. Meat and blood was for the gods and for the gods alone. And after the flood, human beings were allowed to eat meat by the gods. And what happened after that? We started growing civilization and sparking all these things. We know that by eating meat increased our brain size. And we know that by eating meat allowed our brains to process information better. We know that when we went from eating meat to cooking our meat before we ate it, we even helped with the enzymes to break down and allowed for more nutrition process. So hilarious that you say it's a vegan protest to troll, but it's actually true. Fuck veganism, yeah. Oh my god. But I mean, listen, vegan food isn't bad. I make a few different pastas with like bacon, and it's actually meatless bacon. Or some foods I make with the bacon, I'll make it with meatless bacon. And there's some foods I'll make like with meatless meat. Like I used to make this awesome bolognese sauce. I still do. And but I used to do it a lot with meatless meat. And I love doing it with meatless meat because I still tasted the meat. And but then what happened was is I didn't taste all the grease from cooking the regular meat, and it allowed me to taste all the other flavors. I would be able to taste the onion individually, jalapeno peppers, regular peppers, the garlic, excuse me, all these different things. I would be able to taste all because I took away that grease from the meat. So, I mean, listen, veganism ain't bad, but we do need meat for brain development and brain growth and all these things. I know you can get your proteins and vitamins and nutrients from other things, but history shows it's not the same. So, sorry, not sorry, but we're fucking protesting veganism. There you go. There's your troll comment. Anyway, back to the warrior mind. So today we're talking about the warrior mind and the warrior mentality. Remember, if you miss any part of the podcast, you could always go back and listen on all podcast platforms. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, whatever, Ghana Podcast, Odyssey, you name it, we're on it. We're not on like one or two podcast platforms that it offers me to be on, I think, but that's because it was too annoying to set up. So I was like, fuck this. And then it kept asking me to prove it. And then we tried to get on Google Podcasts for the longest time. And then Google got rid of their podcasting app. So now there's like no way to get on Google Podcasts because it doesn't even exist. And Google Podcasts sucked anyway. It was like the worst way to watch it. It was like that Family Guy skit when they're sitting there in front of the TV and he's like, "We now return to Amazon Prime, the eighth best way to watch TV." Like it's so funny because it's so true. Although Amazon Prime has gotten way better since back then, but that shit was so freaking funny, dude. Because it's so true. It's like the same thing. Same thing about Spotify too. Spotify, get off Spotify. Spotify is whack. If you're a millennial, Spotify is great. But listen, Spotify was great when we were in college and broke as a joke and paid $2 a month to have unlimited skips and commercials. That was great. That was great. But now, listen, bro, it's the future. You got to just get on. First of all, Spotify doesn't even have all of every music, and they take music off of there sometimes. It's ridiculous. Just get on Apple Music or Amazon Music and get everything. Get everything. Which Amazon Music I noticed is actually fucking up recently. They came out with a new update for it like 2-3 months ago, and it's just been fucking up. Like half the songs that were in my library are gone because they made like a new library adding system. And then now on my desktop versus my phone, some things are added to the library. Even if I did it on my phone originally, some things are not on both devices, which makes zero sense at all. I mean, it's literally a music. It is not. It's not freaking like I'm whatever. It's literally just music. And then they do all this stuff. Plus, if you pay for Amazon Prime, you get one free Audible book a month. Though I pay for Audibles because I freaking love Audibles and their books. I just finished another book and started another one just a couple days ago. I'm already 2 hours into it. It's great. It's a short one, so I'll be done with it in like another 2 days. Well, I'm probably not going to listen, so I'll be done with it by like Wednesday next week. And then we'll start a new book again. I'm going to have to go back to, I think I'm on book 4 of this other one. So it's going to be great. I'm excited for all of it. I love listening to audibles, but anyway, it's part of I don't mind mentioning this because, especially in the thing, because it actually has to do with our conversation for today. Good morning, Mercy. How are you? It actually has to do with our conversation for today because it's about keeping the discipline and keeping the routine of the daily thing. I wake up, I have my daily routine every day. I wake up, the alarm goes off at 6. I sometimes get up right to it. Sometimes I get up to like the 3rd or 4th alarm, but eventually we get our asses up, out of bed. We make that bed, we make that coffee, we get out, we have a little bit of a smoke, we get set up, we get ready to go, and then bam, we are on it for the day. And then I get in the car and I press play on that audio book, and I freaking love that shit. And I got like a half-hour drive in the morning, plus or minus depending on traffic. Well, not minus, but definitely plus or plus a lot more depending on traffic and all that shit. Fuck traffic, fuck driving. And we need to learn. We need instant teleportation. Okay, like fuck driving, everything. And it'd be great too is if you get rid of all these roads because you have teleportation or flying cars and shit, some sort of thing, you would have more land for housing. You'd make it, you would have more land for housing and more land to preserve nature. You would do all these things. I appreciate you with that shout out, bro. Shout out to fucking, the tank. Y'all ain't following, High Potential. You should do that because he streams 24/7. So if you need like constant 24/7 entertainment, that's what you get. You get 24/7 entertainment. Last seen playing, co-working, and studying. That's a shock. Oh, do you work in that laboratory, bro? Bro, are you in the laboratory, bro? Would you like some cookies, bro? But yeah, seriously though, he's on all the time, 24/7. If you like watching people sleep, see, he's the opposite of me. I say we don't need sleep ever. Stay up all the time, and whatever. And he's and he's like, no, I'm going to bed. It's 9 o'clock. Just wanted to stop in and say good morning. I'm doing homework. I appreciate you, Mercy. I hope I have increased your brain and increased your blood flow to your brain today to get that to get that blood flowing, to get that intelligence pumping, to get it going. And I appreciate you coming in and just saying hi. I love that. I love that. That's so nice. I love when people say hi. So, and good morning. And so, it's so interesting though, because I do I follow the routine. The other day, I was straight up for 43 hours straight. I mean, and I didn't feel a bit tired, which was so crazy. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon the very next day, and I'm sitting there in the office, and I'm just like, I'm not tired. Like, I'm literally not tired at all. I'm fucking wide awake. I'm ready to go. I'm doing all this, and I realized it was because I had a task to do. I stayed up late because I didn't stay up late to play video games. I actually had a task to do. I was like, we need to finish this AI chatbot. And so I stayed up all night and doing it. And it wasn't even a big deal because I was so focused in completing the task that it literally hyper focus is the best drug. Dude, it's so crazy because I literally was up and it was like I remember it was 1 o'clock in the morning and I was like, all right, I got plenty of time. I'm doing this. And I was like doing that shit. And then the next thing I knew, I looked at the thing and it was 3:30. And I was like, shit, I should like have a cigarette right now. Like I need to take a break for a second. Like I need to get my brain cleared. And then it was like 3 in the morning, and the next thing I knew, I was back doing the shit, and the next thing I knew was 5 o'clock, and I'm like, oh my god, I'll make a cup of coffee now. I'm only an hour until my alarm goes off. I'm like, fuck it. I didn't even realize the time was flowing. It didn't even mean anything. Like it was just a going, dude. Like we don't teach people to be passionate about. We force them to solve pre-written problems in a single way. Yeah, totally. Like I mentioned before many times. My mother was crazy in school. Like for me and stuff. Like she would make me do shit. Like I was not allowed to see my friends until all my shit was done, and half the time I didn't see my friends because by the time I'm done with my homework, it's 9 o'clock at night. But my mother would literally take my math home. I wasn't that great at math. She would literally take my math homework, make photocopies of it, and make me do it over and over again. And honestly, I got to be amazing at math, and I love math to this day. So can't hate on it. And what did it do? It was discipline. It made me get better at it. It made me become smarter and more diligent. You staying up and you didn't even know it? Yeah, bro, I was wide awake, dude. I was like, I literally didn't even realize, bro. Like people were like, all right, I'm going to bed on stream. I was in people's stream and I'm like going to bed. I'm like, what is that? What is that, Ernie? I don't understand. And I'm just like, so I just kept on working. It's crazy too because I literally like will start like writing. Like anytime I do a writing project, I'll get in like this whole mood. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get so stoned and creative and all these different things. And this happens like almost every single time I write. Like I literally will roll a joint, roll a blunt or something, or pack the bowl, whatever I'll do to get that creative juices flowing. I'll literally take like maybe one hit and then 3 hours go by and I didn't smoke it the entire time and I got like 20 pages or whatever written. Like I just, when you have that passion for it, when you have the diligence and the commitment and all those things, you don't need the drugs. You don't need the Adderall. You don't even need the cup of coffee. You just go and do it because you can do it. You can get it done. That's the level of discipline that these samurai and these warriors were doing. They literally you would get up and be like, all right, time to do it again. Time to get up and practice. It's the same thing you do now. You don't practice your katas, like I said earlier, but you go to the gym. You work on your routine, you get you fit. If you're a girl, you're making sure that ass looks good. You're doing all these different things to just make sure that you get like all these things. And you know, I stayed up the other day all night too. I was like, bro, I've been so busy. I haven't played, like, this was like a week ago. I stayed up for literally 2 days straight because I was like, I'm so busy. I don't even have time to play my video games, and I just spent all this money on video games, and I literally stayed up the entire night just playing video games because I was like, I want to get my money's worth, and like I want to enjoy myself. Like, I'm fucking grinding over here, and it's not even my busy season yet. Like, you wait until like I come in at fucking 2 o'clock in the morning, come home at 2 o'clock in the morning. You wait until I literally, I fucking go and we record this podcast, and then we're done. I publish it, and I leave, and I go back to work. Like, it's literally, it's gonna be crazy. And do I even care? No, because one, I'm disciplined, so I don't give a shit about doing that all the time. It doesn't matter to me. And two, you might complain about it, but you are certain as hell not going to be complaining about it when that paycheck comes, for sure. So, you know what? I don't care. I'll work all motherfucking day. I don't give a shit because when that paycheck comes, I'm happy as a clam. I don't care. You know, like, I'm literally just, it's great. It's the greatest fucking thing. So who gives a shit if you don't sleep for a little bit and you gotta blah, 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 blah. Well, who gives a fuck? Like, grab a cup of coffee, go to the fitness store and get some energy supplements. Fucking stay awake and get your shit done. Like, there's no excuses. Like, I literally start off like 50 projects all the time and do them all, and then, but they get done. That's the key. You can start off of one project, 10 projects, 100 projects, but if you don't get it done, it doesn't matter. That was the key in the warrior mentality, in the samurai way. That was the key, is you did not just have to have the mental discipline. You had to complete the task. It wasn't just about attempting to do it. You had to finish it. You had to do it. And even if you failed, if you learned from it, it was okay. But if you didn't learn from it, it was considered dishonorable. So it was being a samurai and being a warrior was all about the mentality of it. If you had your mind right, bro, that's the second time I hit my face on this mic. If you had your mind right, you didn't need to worry about anything else because you knew that your katas were good. You practiced your form, you practiced your discipline, and your mind was right. It was ready to go. You were ready. Everything was ready and strong and good. Then you literally would have all these issues would be so solvable to you because you literally had you know, no other choice. Your choice was solve it or die trying. That was it. And you solved it because your other choice is die trying. There's nothing else to do. So you had an army to go against. That's why it's so possible for these beings to go out there, these people to go out there and go and face one man to face an entire army because of their level of confidence that they had in themselves and in their training and in their perspective. They didn't care that you were an entire army. You were still not as strong as them. 10,000 soldiers you could have brought to fight one guy, and that guy would have stood up and been like, fuck it, bro, I'm ready. And dead ass, you think I'm just sarcasm? That's what they would say. 100%. They would go out there and be like, well, somebody's got to fight these guys. And that's exactly why the samurai would go out and do these things, raise their sword above their head and say, I'm Lord so-and-so, and do all these, and say all these things, and these are all my accomplishments. And it's because of the fact that they had such discipline and confidence in themselves and in their training and in their abilities to do all these things. It's fantastic. And so the warrior mentality is really an absolute um important thing. It is the most important thing in this world because when you're when you're strong and disciplined, accomplishing things is just second nature to you. Accomplishing the world is literally second nature to you. You could do all these things. Look at the biggest men of these days. I remember I was watching um CNN. This was maybe 3 months ago, if not longer. And the I forget who the newscaster was, but they were talking about how Elon Musk is always up and he's never sleeping and he's always tweeting, and we know it's actually him who's doing the tweeting. It's not like somebody else. And and so like 3 in the morning, he's like tweeting and whatever, and not just like one day a week, but like every day of the week. And you're like, well, this guy owns like 10 businesses, is the world's richest man, has 36 baby mamas, all this other stuff, and the guy never fucking sleeps. Yeah, of course not. He's fucking disciplined, bro. He's got all this time and this mentality to do all these things because he's organized and ready and disciplined and knows what he wants and knows how to get at it and knows how to do it. So it's not impossible. They would always, I remember seeing this and I remember them being like, oh, he's never sleeps and he's a crazy, insane person. He's got to, he should sleep sometimes. I remember watching this whole thing and I remember thinking the whole time, like, nah, he shouldn't sleep. I respect him for not sleeping because he's owns like 10 businesses and he does all these things. I mean, what's he going to be like fucking Jeff Bezos, sitting on all his yachts? I mean, this is why he's second right now because he's just sitting there on his yachts and banging all these different girls and his helicopter pilot and his new wife and all this shit and not focusing on the business. And what happened? Look, Alexa sucks ass now. Literally. Terrible. Terrible. Half of everything that they do is awful. Their whole programming has gotten terrible, whatever. And then they just keep raising the price and people are leaving, so they raise the price again. It's like it's getting bad. The only thing that's great with Amazon right now is it's shopping, Amazon Music, and Audible. And even I'd mentioned before how Amazon Music is on a downturn. So it's I recognize the discipline in him staying awake all the time. I recognize the discipline and the commitment. And not only that, but is he disciplined and committed? But he accomplishes the tasks. He says, fuck California, I'm moving my factory to Texas. 2 months later, the whole factory is built in Texas. Everybody's there and ready to go. That's called accomplishing. That's literally setting out and accomplishing and doing what you said you were going to do. Think about it. It's literally doing what you said you were going to do. That's an accomplishment. That's accomplishing your goal right then and there. So if he goes out and says, tomorrow I'm going to go and start my own political party, and then a few days later it's registered. All right. Are a lot of people joining it? Probably not. Do a lot of people love it? Even less so. But you can't argue with the fact that the guy said he's going to do something, went out and did it, and now it's done. Can't argue with that fact. And that's the reality of it, is that's exactly what he's doing. It's the same thing with all of us. We need to go out and do all these different things and have all these different beliefs. And really, we need to understand that this is the world that we live in. If you don't do anything, you're not going to accomplish anything. I find it so interesting because I'm always doing something. I find it fun and a part of life. I think it's great. I don't understand why people just want to, chill out and lay around all the time. I mean, sometimes it's nice. I'm a big fan of lounging on the couch and watching TV or lounging in the bed or in this nice chair and doing something. But Am I going to do that all day, every day? No, it's a waste of life and a waste of time. And that's exactly what the samurai thought. That's exactly what these warriors thought. They thought it was all just nonsense. It was all a waste of time unless you went out there and made goals and accomplished them. If you didn't accomplish the goals, you didn't do shit. That was their whole idea and mentality. And it was great because these guys would go out and accomplish things. Think about how in World War II, you went from Japan being a not an industrial society to all these people having this discipline and commitment and becoming one of the world's most industrial societies. I was watching this must have been like 4 or 5 years ago now. I was watching this documentary on Japan's growing infrastructure and compared to other countries and all these things. And what was so interesting too is the person who made the documentary and then obviously the narrator narrated this part is they said that they combined um first of all, give you some context. Japan is really an interesting place because in one hand you have this most advanced society with robots and all these different things, and on the other hand it's no different than 300 AD. So you go somewhere else and it's 300 AD, and you walk over here and it's 2022, or 2025, 2225, whatever. It's the past and the future, and there's not really much of a middle ground. And what's so interesting too is this person who created this said that they felt like the people of Japan were embracing the old samurai way and the warrior mentality and the discipline in accomplishing nationwide tasks to this day. And you see that before World War II, when Japan had their rapid industrialization right at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, when they had their extremely rapid industrialization, all the way to now, when they have their not just rapid industrialization, but advanced industrialization, advanced more than even we have here in the West. We don't have those high-speed trains. We're just now getting robots, and if it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't have any robots right now because Elon Musk's robots are the only full-functioning robots that can walk on legs and do all this autonomous features and all these things for people. So I mean, have you seen those robots and the one serving popcorn in Texas or the one driving car and shit? I mean, that's fucking crazy. So, I mean, you got to see that shit. So, it's unbelievable. But the point is that this culture here embraced their own past in order to lead the way into the future. And that's what's incredible is you realize that everything you did in the past was actually perfect. You did it all great. You just now need to bring it into the modern era. Okay, so we're better at managing the economy. We don't have slaves. We have service industries. We have technical industries, production industries, all these different things. You could do all these things. It's not like you need to go, travel for 3 months to the nearest town because they have nicer silk than you and hopefully they'll take your oxen as trade. I mean, it's not that. It's a different world that we live in, but it doesn't mean you can't imply the ancient world and your ancient beliefs to the modern world. In fact, you can. You can absolutely do that. And the reason you could do that is because the world is changing, but your mentality doesn't have to. If you're disciplined and committed and honorable in yourself, honest, trustworthy, you'll keep going and you'll keep sacrificing all these different things. You'll keep growing the world and achieving your achievements. You'll do all these things because it's in your nature, it's in your blood. You want to wake up tomorrow morning and go to the gym? Well, you'll wake up tomorrow morning and go to the gym as long as you stay committed. If you don't stay committed, these samurai believed that you were a waste of life and it was a waste of life. If you made tasks as a samurai and didn't accomplish them, not only were you a waste of time, but you were a waste of life and you were dishonorable in the eyes of the gods of the kami. You know, we're going to keep on going with this conversation, especially next week, but it's so interesting because the kami, even today, lead many Japanese people's daily lives, are absolutely wonderful. And it's incredible because these beings came down from the heavens. You have the stories over and over again. Same thing every single time, every single culture, every single belief system. Somebody came down from somewhere and taught me something. Who that person was, a little different of a conversation. But somebody came down and it was all about worshiping them. It was all about your belief in worshiping them. And so I find it fantastic that they believed in all these different things. We were talking about, we were talking about Vedism before. That's another one that keeps on going because Vedism really believes in many of the similar things that we believe in today. They also believed in one divine God. They believed in all these one singular supreme gods, and they just called the other beings that were with them gods. Today in Christianity and in our modern terms, we call them angels. But it's the same thing. And today we worship angels and saints and all these different things. And not just the supreme God, not just Jesus and all these things. You worship these other beings who are also like them in order to emulate them. That's why you worship people. That's why you worship beings. That's why we worship the gods in the first place, is because you want to emulate them. And if you don't emulate them, then you're not being successful in life and you're being dishonorable, not only to the gods, but to yourself, according to this mentality. Remember, we're talking today about this mentality that we have. So it was so interesting. And why didn't I get that notification for the follow? I appreciate you with that follow, yo. That's awesome. Why didn't I get why isn't the notifications working? God damn it. I just set this stuff up again for the 18th time. Why didn't it tell me? I appreciate you. It's awesome. So it's absolutely it's absolutely wonderful that these gods were so invested in human life and we were invested in their lives. We still are to this day. We do everything to worship these gods, even if it's just the one supreme Christian God or whatever. We do everything to worship that being. And we do that in order to better ourselves and better our own lives. The samurai believed in the same thing. Worship for them was about worshiping yourself and the world you live in. It was about giving thanks for this beautiful planet and this beautiful land and the world we lived in. It was about giving thanks for yourself and your mind and your body and your wholeheartedness and your sanity. It was about doing all these things that kept your honor strong, that kept your discipline strong. It was about honoring the world that you lived in. And the the very interesting part about it is these samurai would continue on all the way through into the modern day. And even our modern Japanese and in our pre-modern era of pre-World War II and World War II and stuff, we didn't have the samurai swords and all those things. We had guns and stuff, but they still emulated the samurai way. If you ever seen that movie, The Last Samurai, great movie. It's a true story. It was about how at the end of the American Civil War, we were started trading with Japan, and we brought them weaponry and helped advance their military. And they were people who wanted to stick back to the old ways, to keep on going with the old times and the old ways. And they created a rebellion, different factions. There was a shogun who literally rebelled against them, who's played by the main character in that one of the main characters in that movie, and he grew a following of people who wanted to be against him. But then, because they wanted to be peaceful, one with nature, one in the things. This is part of the Shinto way. This is part of, you don't want to disturb nature. You want to be a part of it. You want to live in part of it. You want to harmonize with it. But there's the other samurai mentality of power and strength and domination. So at the end of our Civil War, the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, when we started helping Japan modernize, militarily speaking at least, they embraced it so much because it brought them more power, more honor, more discipline. It did all these things that they believed in already because they were the samurai, the warriors, the leaders, all the ones who did all these things. They were the ones who wanted more power, who would give their support to the leaders, to all these different groups. And I find it fantastic because you had these two different mentalities, but we're actually talking about the same thing, and yet somehow they're fighting with each other. You had, you wanted to. It was almost like they took the warrior mentality, the samurai way, the samurai mind, and just split it into two groups. You have the one group that's peaceful, and you have the one group that's warlike and aggressive. But in reality, the samurai were both. I watched this other thing recently that maybe it was a few weeks ago only, that they were talking about how some of it was about different warriors in different cultures, I remember. And they were talking about how some of the samurai, we might today call them gay. But they didn't think of it that way in that culture. They thought of it as just, some people were like that. And it wasn't even, shunned upon in many parts of the Japanese dynasties. Many of the shoguns did not, did not condone it. They either looked the other way or just accepted it as a part of life and didn't care one least bit. So it's really interesting because you consider these guys to be the manliest men, the strongest, the best warriors on the entire planet, and yet you find out that they're actually gay. It's very interesting because it shows that you could be many different things. You could be peaceful and loving in a certain way and also be aggressive and strong and powerful in another way without dishonoring yourself or your family or the gods or whatever. You could do all these different things. And like I said, they didn't even really believe in that type of thing. There were, many women went out and had multiple lovers. Men had multiple lovers. They had concubines. They had multiple wives, all these different things. It was a very different culture. But it was also different because you would want to have multiple wives because let's say if a woman got pregnant, 5 times, maybe only 3 of them would survive childbirth and 1 or 2 would grow up to adulthood and one would make it to old age. So you would have concubines, 10, 20 concubines, just so you can make sure you had kids. It was entirely possible for you to have 20 concubines and have 2 kids brought to each, 40 kids, and only have like 5 of them survive. It was entirely possible in those days. Same thing in Europe and in other parts of the world. It was entirely possible for that to happen. So to have multiple wives was not only considered, the right thing to do, but it was considered your duty to do it because you had to pass on your genes, your warrior mentality, the samurai mind, all these things. You had to pass it on to the next generation because otherwise there would be no generation and it would be a dishonor to yourself and to your family. So it was so interesting because the way that they perceive the world and the way that they perceived everything is just so fascinating to me. It's really incredible. And these warriors would just go and they were so committed to everything that once you told them something, they were just like, I'm going to do it. And I guarantee you, I will accomplish it 100%. There's no stopping me, no going back, blah, blah, blah. And this is what they did. It was absolutely incredible. And so I love talking about Japanese culture, Shintoism, Buddhism, and like I said, I would be more of a Zen Buddhist where I believe in Confucian ideals and Buddhist ideals. I'm a combination guy. I like to believe in multiple things and make a combined narrative out of it. And that's kind of what Zen Buddhism is. They took the 3 greatest Eastern traditions and combined them into one. I mean, that's really what it is. You still worship all the kamis and all those things, and Buddha is just another saint. And you worship all these different things, and that's just a part of life. So it's so interesting. And so when we continue on next time, we're going to move from now. I touched on it a little bit this time about the gods and the thing, but next time we're going to move into the warrior mind and go into the concept of the mythological realm and the gods and study Shintoism really and how we understand it. Shintoism is one of the best and greatest religions in the world, especially to study and learn about. It's absolutely interesting. They believed in all these different things, vibrations of the earth, which we're now talking about in modern day string theory, and the Vedas were saying the same thing 6,000 years ago. So clearly, there's something going on here. And so we're gonna get into the more mythological realm, talk about Amaterasu, talk about Susanoo, talk about all the other gods and how they came down. We're gonna talk about that ancient alien episode where he went to Japan. We're not gonna show the clip, but we're just gonna talk about it and saw that rock ship, which was pretty cool to think about because it's like I said a few weeks ago in that when we were talking about different biology stuff. Just because if you see an object, if you're around, all your people have done for the past 2,000 years is work with stone, and you see an object that's harder or just as hard as stone, slightly looking whatever, but you don't know that it's called a metal and you don't know what kind of metal it is. Well, what you're going to call it is a stone, is a rock, is a boulder. It's hard as the earth, it's hard as stone. You ain't getting through it, nothing. Well, that's you could imagine it could be. You could imagine a ship descending and you calling it a stone ship because you don't know what it is. You know what a ship is maybe because you've sailed in the waters and it looks like it's sailing in the water, but it in reality it's it's a different thing flying through the air. So when we talk next time, we're going to talk about Shintoism, the mythological realm, the gods, all these different things. But this time I wanted to drill into home with you is the discipline. It's all about discipline. That's what's key. That's what's key to all these things. Doing all these things. You know, you're going to complain about not having enough money. Get out there and get a second job, third job. You don't need to sleep. I'm telling you, you don't need to sleep. I know for a fact I don't need to sleep, so neither do you. And what am I, like Superman or something? So you can go out and do all these things, but the point is probable. You have to be committed, diligent, dedicated, honest with yourself. That's the other thing. You can't be honest to everybody and lying to yourself. You might as well lie to everybody else too. It makes no difference, because you are you, number one, you, or coffee. It's not cold, but it's not like hot. It's not like lukewarm either. It's just like warm. So when we delve into that, we'll delve into the mythological realm. But I realized that this is such an important topic to me, not only because of the whole discipline access part and for the podcast, but I embrace this in such my own everyday life, even without doing it. I like to stay disciplined in what I do. I love routines. I love having tasks to complete and doing all these things. It's my favorite. And that's exactly the samurai way. Why? Because it makes me feel good about myself. When you finish a task and when you accomplish something, think about how good it feels. You feel great, like you did it. You accomplished it. Even if it doesn't last forever, you still did it. You're making your bed in the morning is your first accomplishment and it feels great. But if you're still feeling good about making your bed in the morning at 5 p.m., well, you didn't do shit all day because it's supposed to be your first accomplishment, not your only accomplishment. And that's what's key is you got to keep on pushing, keep on going. You have to stay disciplined and rigorous. By staying disciplined and rigorous, you can achieve anything and everything you want. I want to thank you all for joining me on this much lovely, lovely day. I hope you enjoy yourselves and have a great rest of your day. We will be back tomorrow for games and chilling. And then we'll be back next week for the continuation of this episode with the Shintoism and the mythological side of it. Today, go out there, create routines for yourself, make yourself disciplined, make yourself a indispensable person, but not only to other people, but in here, in your mind. In your own mind and in your own self. Make yourself disciplined. Make yourself strong, committed, dedicated. And nobody's stopping you but you. Have a wonderful day, y'all. We're out of here. Peace.